Greetings, I am Erin Patten, metaphysical master in a millennial age, and it is my life's purpose to guide you and organizations along an enlightened path. So I invite you to sit comfortably and tune in as I welcome you to the Meta Business Millennial, where we get the real conversations you won't get in the boardroom so that we understand this is exactly the path we need to be on in order to grow, evolve, and thrive. Greetings. I am Erin Patten, also known as Master L. Welcome to the Meta Business Millennial podcast. I hope that you are able to tune in to us every week at the Meta Business Millennial podcast. Right now, I'm doing solo podcasts where I'm really channeling messages that are really useful for the collective. And I really feel like today's message is necessary for the collective because there's so much talk about tech. There's so much talk about artificial intelligence, and it's really permeating all aspects of society, business, education, you name it, AI is there. Our phones are AI enabled. Like, we're always just like super shocked when we're seeing, are hearing that our phones are listening to us, or we go to Instagram and we see advertisements that really are spot on to what we were just talking about with a friend or family member moments ago. So AI is here. And generative AI, especially, that's really focused on just iterating and creating things for us, is also here, and it's developing rapidly. And I did a poll on Instagram yesterday, which is one reason why I was really focused on getting on Instagram, because I really wanted to connect with the folks, especially that responded to the poll, because I asked 3 discrete questions. When you think of AI, how does it make you feel? Does it make you feel scared? Does it make you feel excited about the future? Or is it curious about the possibilities? And I have to say that majority of the folks voted makes them curious about the possibilities. And for me, I feel like it gets me excited about the future, because when we're thinking about technology and how technology has rapidly enhanced our way of living, our way of being just in the past 20 years. I mean, I'm definitely part of the big earlier millennial class. Like, I'm like the original millennial. And when I think about technology, and like when I was getting on AIM and having to listen to like the dial-up trying to get on the internet, and chatting with my friends, and BlackBerry generation and two-way pager generation, this was really a boom in the way we communicated and the way we interacted as people. And people can say all kinds of, obviously this is a debate, so that's this is a great debate, this human versus AI, this human versus technology piece. And so for me, I really feel like it's had such a profound impact on how we move, how we breathe, how we operate as human beings on this planet, just the advent of the internet. And it's created an opportunity to really democratize the way we show up in the world. It's really democratized media, as much as we know that there is still a lot of planning and control and dominant players in media. There still is this opportunity to really be present, for example, myself right here, for you, because of the democratization of the internet and technology. And so this is why I kind of fundamentally start with that as why I'm so excited about the future of AI and just technology in general, because we, especially as conscious human beings, as enlightened leaders, can really leverage these technologies to support us into the future until we really are able to turn on our human technology. And so that's why I kind of wanted to start this conversation, because of course, as a metaphysical master, I talk about sort of the physical aspects of the technology. And then, as we start to understand that piece, then we can move into the metaphysical aspects of technology, which our human bodies are by far the most advanced technology on this planet consciously. And so that's a statement that I hope that if nothing else, people can leave with, in knowing that there should never be any fear in thinking about the future, first of all. And second of all, there absolutely shouldn't be fear in things that we are creating as human beings, especially as conscious human beings. So when we're consciously creating things, it's going to have the highest ability, it's going to have the highest outcome. And so, um, I really want to just kind of start there because that feels really good in terms of how we're really going to start showing up for ourselves with AI. And I pulled up some notes here that I'm going to reference because I think that they're really great for today's podcast. And I actually was inspired to do this topic as I speak to every week. There's just always like a inspiration by a Harvard Business School article. And I get these emails from Harvard Business School. I'm an alum of Harvard Business School. I went there to get my master's in my MBA, my master's in business administration. And while I was there, I was really focused on social enterprises and essentially how business can do good in the world. And I did that jointly with the Kennedy School as in the public policy program. And I get these emails every week from HBS, and they call it working knowledge. And they're really, and I say all this because it's really important to cite where you get your facts from, or even your inspiration if it's citable. And the reason why I chose this HBS article is because I feel as if HBS is really the standard, if you will, in business research and business news, and people really rely on it as a reputable source. And so when they're speaking to AI, they brought up these points, and I really kind of want to speak to them in this podcast because I believe that they're very salient points around things we should consider when we're thinking about AI technology and our interaction with it, as business leaders moving into the future. And the first is addressing the algorithmic biases. Addressing the algorithmic biases is super fundamental because when we think about the algorithmic biases and that which what we experience in just life in general, when we talk about biases, conscious biases, unconscious biases, these are things that are really programmed since birth in human beings. And human beings are the ones that are, for now, coding these AI. At some point they're getting coded by humans. And then of course maybe AI can develop more AI. However, the initial creator for AI in this reality are human beings. And so when we talk about biases inherently are our programs, like who we are, and they come from what we were raised in, how we were taught, our education, our family backgrounds, our culture, our location in the world. All of these are inputs that form essentially our conscious or unconscious biases. And these then get programmed into AI, and that are called algorithmic biases. So fundamentally, when we're thinking about addressing algorithmic biases, which we are always, you know, in different circles criticizing social media for, because it feels as if the algorithms are always favoring destructive content or sexual content, or and not lifting up positive messages as much, not lifting up pure messages, if you will. And so this essentially is part of the bias in the algorithm. What are people really attracted to, is essentially what's being fed. And what people are attracted to is part of their programming. And when you're finding that more human beings are attracted to, fear driven things, violence driven things, then this is a reflection of the collective consciousness. And so that feels and looks like people really are resonating with the fear frequency, or a prejudice or violent or discriminatory frequency. And so that's essentially what we're being fed. And so, I'm speaking to this because it's really a fundamental baseline and foundation and defining of what biases is, and particularly in technology. And how you address it is essentially by addressing the people, particularly the people who are coding the tech, who are coding the AI. So if you're wanting to have algorithms that are more open to essentially using sort of the social media as the example, content that is more high vibes, positive, loving, nurturing, empathetic, then you're going to have coders and developers that embody those frequencies, that embody those characteristics, that embody that to the fullest, because that's what essentially is then fed into the codes, what's fed into the frequency of that, of the AI program or the AI device or the AI technology in general. So when you're thinking about, and this is why I get excited about the future, because the nature of my work inherently is about lifting human consciousness, about making us much more aware about what we're saying, how we're showing up, what we're doing in the world. And if we aren't doing that with more consciousness, and if we aren't doing that with more empathy or more love, then we certainly are not living up to our fullest potential, put it that way. And for us at the meta business world, it's always about acknowledging our fullest potential. And so the other point that was brought up in the article was addressing algorithmic biases, which we spoke to about the biases, and we can continue to speak about that. And then safeguarding privacy. So this is the piece that really I believe is controversial, because our privacy and all that we are is kind of everywhere. And when we're thinking about how we show up in the world, what we want shared, what we don't want shared, it's very difficult to protect ourselves in that way. And the reason why I say it's difficult, and there have been so many people who've taken way deeper dives into this than I ever have. However, when we're talking about, the nature of privacy, and not just like, walking down the street and how you dress, etc., but on the internet, this is it's it's such a rabbit hole. I really am having to sit with myself around how much do I care that is known about me out in the world. And I just really have to sit with that as an individual, because I honestly am not even sure how much we can stop of ourselves being shared. It feels like every time I'm inputting information into a different app or a different website, there's incredibly long terms and conditions and privacy policies that I definitely am not reading. And I don't think that most people are reading. Some people are definitely, because I've definitely seen folks out there that are doing that work. Yet it is very, very difficult to have yourself not being monitored. And I feel like, in this day and time, that really is really incumbent upon us, as conscious beings, as individuals, to really sit with, are we comfortable with everyone knowing everything about us? And if we're not, what is it that is shameful about that, and heal it? And that's really how I feel about that, because, when it comes to being private, only so much of ourselves can be. We're always being seen. And this is really what we're moving into, particularly in this new age, is the ability to be seen, the ability to be known. And that's actually what our soul desires. I mean, that's why we came here to begin with. So when we're thinking about the AI conversation, the technology conversation, and privacy, how much are we willing to be seen? And that needs to be a personal question that we ask ourselves, and how much we are willing to, um, of course, share. That's, up to us, willingly. But then at the end of the day, there's aspects that's being shared that we can't control. And are we okay with that? And if we aren't okay, then we definitely have to sit with ourselves and do some of that work of just really coming into like, how does the sharing piece not make me feel good? And thank you all for Instagram for tuning in, because I was really struggling to get that set up. So I see people are coming into the room, and that makes me feel good, like it was worth a little bit of the wait. And moving down the line of things in terms of how we're talking about the human versus AI. One of the other things that really came up, the last thing that I really want to speak to, is the promotion of transparency, fairness, and interpretability. And this kind of moves into a lot of the inclusion conversation that I've had before. Because that's what I spoke to actually last week on the podcast. And not that I want to kind of continue along those lines, because that is not at all like what I represent in terms of my work. I shouldn't say not at all. It is not the main focus of the Meta Business World work, the D&I piece. However, inclusion is essentially inherent in what I do. And so when I think about, making sure that we're promoting fairness, that we're promoting interpretability, this feels to me like a statement of inclusion, a statement of inclusivity. And that piece is, I believe, we're going to be one of the hardest pieces to really start to integrate as developers, as coders of the AI work, because a lot of the people who even have the skills to do this work are not representative of any communities that are likely needing interpretation. I'm thinking more specifically around deaf, blind, physically challenged. These are populations that are oftentimes, I don't want to say left behind, but kind of are really not always considered in these kinds of conversations. And unfortunately, this is the reality. And interestingly enough, I attended a seminar, or a talk, if you will, hosted by a woman who was a little person and also had extensive experience around various neurodivergent populations, physically divergent populations. And it was very enlightening to really understand the nuances in how people receive information. And so when we talk about technology, when we talk about AI and making it accessible and interpretable by all people, this piece is going to take a lot of work. This piece is going to require highly conscious individuals and being part of the conversations of creation, and looping in the different populations in which it's going to obviously serve. And I believe like this is the piece that, if anyone's talking about the destructive aspect or the fearful aspect of AI and technology, this fundamentally is the piece. Who is sitting in the room when this stuff is being created? And not only who is sitting in the room, what are the intentions of the individuals that are in these rooms creating this technology? And not only what are the intentions of these people in the room, what are their goals? Like what will be, how will they be rewarded for doing this work? And so when we're thinking about those parameters, who's in the room, what are their intentions, and what are their incentives for doing this work, then that is the part I believe that brings a lot of fear and anxiety, when if there are fear and anxiety conversations around AI and technology. And I want to just acknowledge that, because that's fundamentally what's going to move the needle in terms of the human and AI integration going well, going smoothly, and really having the best outcomes for all people and all human beings. And so let's talk about that, because when we're talking about who's in the room, this is where we get into the conversations around some very majority number, 80 to 90% of people who are in developers, who are coders, are either of Asian or white male background. And so this is when we're okay, and then of those people, what are their life stories? Like, what are their motivations? Is it driven solely by money, to make the most money? And if that's the case, then these people may not actually be that concerned about the impact it has on humanity. It may just be about, how do I, get this cranked out fast enough so I can get my paycheck or I can exit and move on to my next, vision or my next dream. And so, this is essentially the conversations that I believe most people are having around who is in the room. And when we're talking about the human versus the AI, who are the humans behind the AI? And I think this is a lot of why, when we were having conversations around, and I'm just talking about collective conversations around, cryptocurrency and who's controlling crypto, who invented it, and it was just like it came out of nowhere, and we have no idea who's controlling it, and it's meant to be this sort of individualistic operation, but is it really? Is it really? And those are the same questions that people are having around AI. Is this really, um, an individual or collective? Is it individually serving or is it serving the collective? And that's really what we want to continue to question ourselves about, because as we question as a collective, then that essentially gets picked up energetically by the people who are creating it. That's how movements are really powerful and really created, is it's a movement of consciousness, not a movement of, protesting in the streets, of screaming and yelling and making signs. As much as we were conditioned and programmed and raised to believe that those kinds of protests mattered, those actually serve us less because it's really pushing against the issue with the same energy that the issue's coming at us with, coming with fear, with anger, with resentment. And so, in order to have solutions and really shift narratives around what we desire in this life and for collective individuals, it has to come from a higher place. So it has to come from us sitting and really questioning ourselves, questioning the universe. Who's in this room making this technology? How can we make it, more open and accessible to more people? Having these conscious thoughts alone are serving the collective, because it enables the energy to flow in that direction. The more you're thinking about it, the more you're talking about it, the more you're talking about it, the more you're seeing news and information about it, so you can have even better conversations and more conscious conversations about it. And who knows, you may end up, serving on some committee or board that changes the trajectory of AI. And that's actually how things work. And so, I mean, I'm gonna start wrapping it up, because even though we started a bit late, I really don't want to keep you guys too much longer in this conversation around AI. But I really want us to start thinking about, what are our thoughts around AI? If we're concerned about who's in the room, how can we release that fear around it? If we do have it. And if we don't have any fear, how can we imagine people in the room that are really serving us and get more curious about the possibilities, just like the folks on Instagram polled and showed that they're really curious about the possibilities. So if you're curious about the possibilities, how can you start to imagine the possibilities? What can AI do to serve humanity until we're able to turn on our own gifts? Because essentially, our technology is within. And when I speak about our technology is within, I talk about this every week: part physical, part emotional, part spiritual soul. The spirit soul is our technology, if you will. It is the electricity that keeps us moving and breathing and waking up in the morning and going to sleep at night and still have our body functioning while we're sleeping. That's our technology. And so our spirit technology is growing by the day, because that's just the age that we're in. And it's going to continue to grow because, like I said, this is the age that we're in, and this is just the cycle of the planet right now in this day and time. So as our spiritual technology grows, we're going to be able to have better and bigger inputs into what AI does, to the point, I believe, where it's non existent, where it's not even necessary. Because our spirit technology is going to be so powerful, we won't even need it. And so, as we're thinking about technology, think about, of course, the physical aspects of the AI, the physical aspects of the technology, but also consider the spirit aspects of technology. And as the metaphysical master, I have to leave us with that point for sure. We have to always think about, who are we as divine beings, as conscious beings, as soul beings, as light beings, as spirit beings? What does that technology look like? What can you imagine for yourself in that regard? Like, that is something to really think about, to really dwell upon, meditate on, reflect upon. And so, with that, I really want to thank you all again for joining me today for the Meta Business Millennial podcast. I invite you to share this episode with a friend, like it, comment, and definitely subscribe to our channel. The Meta Business Millennial has its own social media following, and also my personal I am Erin Patten social media following. And of course, check in with the Meta Business World, what we have in terms of our offerings. We're at www.erinpatten.com. I love you all so much. Peace. Did you really love this episode of the Meta Business Millennial podcast? Well, I am honored, and I appreciate you subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends, because your feedback allows us to co-create more enlightened conversations. And if you're interested in growing your soul now, head over to my website, erinpatten.com, to find all the show notes, links, and free resources to get your energy activated today. In the meantime, stay bright, my friends. Much love and light. Peace.